If you use Medicaid, you need to know what's happening right now. 1 in 5 Americans depends on this program, but major cuts have already started and more could hit in just a few weeks. Let's talk about what this means for you and your care. But first, I'd like to know, have you ever used Medicaid for more than just doctor's visits, like help with food or home care? If so, what's been the most helpful part for you? In a video last year, I shared how in some states, Medicaid has even covered things like rent, transportation, or air conditioners. These programs are changing fast, but I'm really curious. Did any of that help you or your family? Because here's the thing. Last week, the federal government announced that they are making some serious changes to Medicaid, and not everyone's talking about it yet. Basically, they announced that they're ending a special kind of Medicaid funding that helped states pay for things that aren't what you'd usually think of as health care. These programs are called Designated State Health Programs, or DSHPs, and sometimes they're called Designated State Investment Programs, or DSIPs. Now, those names sound complicated, but what really matters is what these programs actually did for people. So let's break this down simply. Normally, Medicaid helps cover things like doctor's visits, prescription drugs, emergency care, and hospital stays. That part is still safe for now. But in the last few years, some states got special permission to use Medicaid in more creative ways. They were able to use those funds to support everyday needs that directly affect your health. Things like helping home care workers, improving internet access for rural clinics, offering grants to support caregivers, and even helping people cover rent or utility bills. In fact, we did a whole video last year that showed some of the incredible things that states were doing with these Medicaid dollars. Some programs paid up to 6 months' rent, helped people get their GEDs, and even covered things like diapers and school supplies. Some states offered cash rewards for completing health goals. It was honestly some of the most inspiring things I've ever seen Medicaid do, and it was awesome. So you might be wondering, though, how did states even get permission to use Medicaid for things like rent in the first place? The answer is something called a Section 1115 waiver. It's a tool that lets states try new ideas with their Medicaid programs, as long as those ideas still help Medicaid improve health outcomes for people with low incomes. Over the years, dozens of states have applied for these waivers to test out different ways of improving health, not just treating illness, but also preventing it. Some offered housing support before or after hospital stays. Others helped pregnant moms access healthier food. Some created job training programs, and even a few handed out air conditioners during extreme heat waves. At one point, over 24 states had programs that were supporting housing, a dozen more helped with food and nutrition, and many others offered caregiver support, employment help, and other practical services that really made a difference in people's lives. And here's the thing. Those programs were working. People were getting help before things got worse. They were staying out of the hospital, staying in their homes, and staying on track with their care. But now all of that is at risk because the federal government is starting to ask some questions. Chiefly, should Medicaid really be paying for that? Aren't there other programs that pay for those things? And to be fair, those are valid questions. This is a valid debate. But it's hard because healthcare is complicated. It's not just about doctors and hospitals. Your healthcare is about everything going on in your life. Poverty and health are tightly connected. When someone doesn't have enough food, when they don't have a safe place to live, when they're constantly stressed out, their health suffers. If you've ever had to choose between buying groceries and filling a prescription, you already know what I'm talking about. If you've ever skipped a doctor's appointment because you didn't have gas money or a ride to get there, you know. When people are struggling just to survive, it takes a toll on their bodies and their minds. Science shows us that this is true. When you don't have enough food, your body doesn't heal as well. Your energy drops. You might get sick more often or stay sick longer. When you don't have a safe place to live, you might be exposed to mold, extreme weather, or unsafe conditions. And that can make chronic issues like asthma or heart problems even worse. When you're under constant stress because you're worried about money or caregiving or just trying to stay afloat, your body feels that too. Stress can raise your blood pressure, mess with your sleep, trigger migraines, and weaken your immune system. This is all very well documented. And of course, the end result is that you get sicker faster. And when people don't get the help they need early, they often end up in the ER or in the hospital. And sometimes it's too late to stop something that could have been managed if they'd had early support. And guess who ends up paying for all of that? Medicaid does. That's why so many states started using Medicaid dollars to help people before they hit that crisis point. It's not just about kindness or giving out more freebies. It's about preventing suffering, saving money overall, and keeping people healthy and safe in their homes. So, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Medicaid should be covering essential supports like housing or nutritious food? Or should it only pay doctors' bills and prescriptions? I would love to know your thoughts on this, so please let me know in the comments. Because here's the thing, right? The federal agency that runs Medicaid has said that it's pulling back. They say these kinds of programs are distracting from the core mission of Medicaid and that they're costing more than they should. So they've decided to stop approving new requests for funding, and they're not renewing any programs that are already in place. That means that states that are using this money, like California, New York, North Carolina, Oregon, and Washington, are being told that when the current funding runs out, that's it. There's no renewal, no replacement. That's it. They're done. The federal match, which is the part that the federal government pays, is just going to go away. So what happens now? States will have to make some tough choices. If they want to keep these programs going, they're going to have to find the money themselves. And let's be honest, most states don't have extra money just lying around. Some programs at risk include things like help with non-medical in-home care, internet and telehealth improvements, and more. That might sound far away from your day-to-day needs, but if you've ever used telehealth or had someone check in on you at home or benefited from a clinic that runs on Medicaid funding, these cuts could touch your life. In fact, a recent study shows that 1 in 5 Americans get their health care through Medicaid, and a lot of them don't even know it. So this could affect you even if you don't think it will. And of course, here's something else that's important to consider. This isn't happening in a vacuum. Congress is also working on a massive federal budget overhaul right now, and some lawmakers want to cut as much as $880 billion from programs like Medicaid. Some of those proposed cuts include new work requirements and changes to how much the federal government pays for certain Medicaid enrollees. I even read that someone is floating the idea of like lifetime caps on how much you can get in benefits. That means states may have to make even more cuts or raise taxes or make other adjustments just to keep basic services going. Now, one thing I do want to let you know, because there's going to be a lot of fear-mongering on this topic, right? We've seen a lot of fear-mongering lately. I want you to know that this isn't the first time that we've been through this boom and bust cycle. So this program, the Section 1115 waivers, have been around for quite some time. And they were expanded, and then the first time that President Trump was in office, they were pulled back a lot because they didn't support what those waivers were accomplishing. So we saw this program pared back a lot. And then in 2021, when the new administration took over, we saw those programs expanded again, and they were expanded very significantly. So now we're seeing them drawn back again. Now, we may just keep yo-yoing back and forth on this, depending on how things go politically with new administrations. Just because these programs are ending now does not necessarily mean that they are ending forever. I just want you to know that because I feel like that's a nuance that's being missed in a lot of the coverage that I've seen. That being said, this is still a really serious issue because a lot of people depend on those essential supports. Now, one of the groups that could be hit the hardest here in the short term is people who are getting addiction treatment. Right now, about 90% of care for opioid and fentanyl addiction is paid for by Medicaid. Cutting that support could make it harder for folks to get help. So that is something to consider. So now, what can you do? I like to leave you with action steps. I never want to leave you feeling hopeless. So first, I don't want you to panic. These changes are happening, but they're not immediate. Like we talked about a second ago, they might not even be permanent, right? Most of these programs will expire over time, not all at once. But it's important to stay informed, and we're going to do our best to keep you updated here on the channel. If you are on Medicaid, or if you care for someone who is, or if you're using these extra supports, I would recommend that you check in with your state's Medicaid office to see what's changing. And if you're dealing with a health issue that might have been caused by a product, chemical, or something else outside your control, I want you to know that you might actually qualify for help in another way as well. Our sponsor, Injury Claims, can help you check if you're eligible for financial compensation. It only takes a few minutes, and you might be surprised at what qualifies. They have open cases right now to help you get compensated for issues rising from processed food, video game addiction, or exposure to harmful products, different things like that. So if you've ever been hurt and you didn't realize that you had a case, this is definitely worth looking into. You can see their full list of open cases at lirlinks.com/claims. Because if and when Medicaid support does get cut, every bit of help matters. And if someone else is responsible for the harm that you've suffered, they should be the ones to help pay for that damage, not you. So if you've used any of the Medicaid services that we've talked about today, if you've had help with groceries, home care, or a telehealth appointment, I'd love to hear more about your experience in the comments. The more we talk about the value that these programs offered, the more we help each other, and the more we can raise awareness of the benefits of these programs. I think a lot of times people hear this and they're like, oh, Medicaid shouldn't be covering rent because that doesn't make sense. But if it's helping save costs overall and it's providing that important support, it may make more fiscal sense, but that's not something that people are going to, I think, be able to logic out on their own. I think that sometimes we have to help illustrate that point in more real world ways. So I would love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Don't forget to check out our other videos for more ways to save money and get free stuff. I'll see you there.